Call the instruction meeting to order. Item 1, for approval of December 16, 2021 instruction meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All of them. No, discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 2, field trips.
So we do have some field trips, which is pretty exciting. And those were outlined for you in your packet. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer best I can.
Ms. Harrington?
How were the CTE, the tech tours for the 8th graders?
Oh, they were great.
Yeah.
It was great. The ambassadors, the students, they were just so fantastic. I just can't say, I can't even express to you. It was awesome
Good.
being in there. It was like they were just professional business people, and it was really awesome.
That's
It was
great.
good.
Good.
Any other questions? Alrighty, item number 3, professional development, update from Peggy's only.
Hello, good evening. So we're just here to provide an update for January professional development. Kathy's going to talk a little bit about the January 12th day that we just had.
Yes. So RSA 193J requires us to provide suicide prevention and awareness training for 2 hours every year. And on January 12th, we did this with our school staff. We provided virtual training with UNH support. And we have also sent the video recording of that out to all staff and contracted personnel of the district, since they're included in this law. And so we fulfilled this at this point. We provided some support resources that our guidance counselors provided to help them through it.
Question.
Yep.
On the content, is this like every year it's updated with new content through UNH, or is it like a cookie cutter type of training program?
So we've had, this is the second year we've provided it. Last year we went with the online program that they provided, and this year we went with UNH, and we're looking at Connor's Ladder for next year. So we're looking at something that's appropriate that we can use throughout the year, and we had a number of counselors go to training that same week for Connor's Ladder.
Connor's
And
Climb,
we're
right?
working on
Connor's Climb or Connor's Ladder?
Connor's Climb.
That
Yeah,
was
thank
one
you.
of our students. when
Yes,
I was in
yes, Connor's
SAU
Climb.
16, so I
Thank
helped
you.
build that.
Yes.
It's good.
So it's, that spreads out much further, and they're prepared for that next year.
Good. And I just bring up that you go through the same training every year, it becomes part of a normal day versus changing content. Usually try its own point. Right?
Yep.
Cool, thank you.
Can I just add that all of you are also required to do that because you are all members of the Rochester School Department. So we'll make sure that you have the link.
So Kim, maybe, I don't know if Kim can hear. We had Kim send that out to,
We'll make sure that you all have that as well. You don't have to do that particular, it's just available to you, but you are required by the RSA to participate in 2 hours of prevention training every year.
Is this similar to what Dover just, I read it in the paper, so
It's required of everyone.
they did peer with the kids and bringing in, peer trainings and whatnot. Do we do that as well? I hope we do.
It's required that,
Okay.
so each school at the end of the year, they have to fill out a report for the DOE, and that's one of the questions, did you provide this opportunity for your students? And they have to answer yes or no, and we always answer yes. And if we didn't answer yes, then we would address that at this level.
Make sure the whole board knows that, not just us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, we will make sure.
yeah,
You do right, Dave.
Kim will
Kim will email that
she's
out.
on it.
Yep.
She's like, thanks. So then we also have some professional development coming up on Monday. So we are excited to bring some MTSS behavior, the B part, to our staff. And this is really our district initiatives and big ideas, and we can see that that hits our district mission, vision, and one of our big pillars here. So this is a schedule and all of the sessions that we have. I don't know if you all can see that, but we have John, we actually just switched to virtual. Today we made that decision to switch to virtual.
In-person virtual, I mean, in-building virtual. So
Yeah.
teachers will be in their buildings, but they'll be participating in
Yeah.
virtual.
So up until today, we were just plugging along with, things are gonna get better, but, you know, I think it was just, for everybody, it would be better to be virtual. So we have John Wortman, and he's awesome. We heard a lot of great things about him from Sandy and others, and he's very excited to be with our staff. I mean, we also could send the links to the board, I don't know if that's something we want to do, but, so that's virtual MTSS Tier 1, so all staff have to go to this one, so we want a reminder of what we can be doing in the classrooms to take care of students so they're not getting to that Tier 2 or Tier 3. De-escalation strategies, behavior plans and contracts, building relationships, Tier 1 classroom management, and zones of regulation. So our teachers all signed up for sessions, and we have our principals presenting and other staff, and we're pretty excited. Kathy and I were switching things today with having, you know, links and things like that for our facilitators and all the teachers, so. Any questions or? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item would be 5-year plan.
So it sounds like there's some restructuring for 5-year, but what we had been doing is trying to bring a presentation to you each month of something that was happening in our schools related to curriculum instruction assessment. We had hoped that the MTSS team could be here tonight. I did put some data that it's under other, but unfortunately, our team has been greatly impacted by COVID, so we didn't have a team to bring to you this evening, so we just have some data here for you. And Kathy and Heidi were also slated to share what's going on with professional development and how it supports our district initiatives.
Can you just explain what MTSS is, please?
It's multi-tiered systems of support, so that
Okay.
means like
All
all
right,
kids, yeah.
pretty easy, okay.
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Mrs. Stowe?
I have a question about, with COVID and kids being out of school and stuff, I don't know if it's MTSS, but are we looking at, or can we get a report on how students are doing where they're missing school because of COVID and missing that instruction? Is that something that the instruction committee would be looking at?
In February, I actually will be out of town in February during your meeting, but Mr. Rapusi is working with school principals right now, pulling together the fall academic data and the mid-year academic data, which we require of all students, and he'll be able to give, and I believe he's going to have some principals there, but I'm not 100% sure who that will be, depending on sickness. But he'll be able to give you an update on where kids came in at the beginning of the year and where they're progressing to right now. So that will be in February.
Okay.
Any other questions? Number 5, public comment. Move on to number 6, other.
And this is what I had referred to before. It's really challenging. I always struggle with, just because I enjoy working with statistics, when you're running statistics on things that are truly not apples to apple. But it does give you an overall, this is the total number of discipline referrals that have been made. This year is the yellow bar. Last year, obviously, we were out of school. Most of the time, that's the gray bar. The blue and the orange bars, what bothers me about presenting that is that those were major infractions. That's all that we were reporting before in our system is major discipline infractions. Whereas now, all discipline infractions are included in this data report. So it's really not apples to apples, but
I'm
it is.
confused to where we are.
It's
They're all
in your
pulling up in the
packet.
Share drive.
Yeah, you go to the shared drive under instruction.
Sorry.
That's okay, no worries.
I couldn't follow along and I didn't want you to get too far without.
No problem.
Okay.
So this is a summary in each school. So this is elementary behavioral referrals by year. So 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, which was, kind of a partial year, and then 21, 22. So my biggest thing I want to impress upon you is that the orange and the blue, the 18, 19, 19, 20 were just the major discipline infractions, and the 21, 22 as part of MTSS is teachers when there's a behavior issue in the classroom, if they, redirect or contact a parent or any type of discipline, they're logging that so that we have a stronger record, so that if Karen is consistently doing this, I know that, Shane and Sarah have tried this intervention, it hasn't worked, so I'm going to try something else. But it's important for us to have that documented, so it does make it look like our referrals are up. They're not up, it's just the way that we're reporting them has changed. So next year, when you look at this, hopefully that'll be more apples to apples data. And then,
Dr. McDonald,
yes,
is it fair to say that our COVID anomaly is the gray?
that is.
Like every business out there is like, don't look at that.
Yes, yeah, and actually I was surprised because we were basically out of school for November, December. I was actually surprised to see that we had some referrals in there, but it was probably for the things that were happening online, cyber issues.
So referral, that's an incident, write-up, however you want to put it? Okay.
Yes, yep, so if I have to address you in class, I document that in your file so that the next person that has you knows. And it also could be just, if I document that you're having a bad week, and so now you're misbehaving in my class, but you've misbehaved in Heidi and Kathy's class, I can look back at that and see something's happening for Shane this week and I need to look at that.
So when you say just talk to me in class because I'm talking too much, something like that, or
That
you're
would, like
talking
a redirect, a teacher redirect
Okay.
wouldn't necessarily, but, a phone call home, an after-school detention, loss of recess, those types of things would be documented, yes. And then the high school reports out a little bit differently. They don't use, so this is, you'll have an individual Swiss report for each of the elementary schools and the middle school by month. The high school doesn't use the same system, so what you have for the high school is an actual document that shows the category for the discipline infraction and a comparison between 1920, because that was the year before COVID, and 21, 22. They did not include the last year because it was such an anomaly. And we hope to have the MTSS team healthy and ready to be here to answer questions on how the implementation of that program is going and the changes that they're seeing in their school as a result of it. I was able to chat with some of the principals. So just an example, we have a principal at William Allen who's fantastic, and he had he looks at his Swiss data. They talk about it each month at their faculty meeting. They saw a huge spike in October, and he said to me, he's like, I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was October 22nd, and it was bitter cold, and we had a bazillion referrals that day. He met with his staff on Monday. They talked about expectations, what's a referral, what can we do? They implemented some new school-wide procedures, talked about respect, and some intervention strategies for the school and classrooms as a whole, and that data went right back down. So by reporting that, that's something that we might not have seen because it wouldn't necessarily have been reported, but because it's reported in this fashion now, he was able to catch that right away. He could pinpoint the day for me. He said he could describe it like it was yesterday, and he talked about exactly what strategies they used to then bring those numbers back down. Yes.
Like, you know that the discipline in schools is a thing that I'm not happy with, obviously. I voiced my opinion on that. I know that DOE is the big problem why we're having issues. They put the law in place where we can't suspend kids, harder to send kids out of school. Do we utilize like in-school suspension, stuff like, because I remember when I was in 8th grade, I had in-school suspension one day, and that's all
it took.
Because they put me in a room that had a bathroom, they brought me my food, I didn't have to leave, there was no reason for me to leave that room, and it taught me a lesson and it never
Yeah.
happened again. So I'm just curious if we're using this or we're just sending kids right back to class to disrupt the kids that want to learn. These are the questions I'm curious to know.
Yeah, we definitely are utilizing in-school suspension still. It's the MTSS, those are major infractions, in-school, out-of-school suspensions. Our hands are tied with the out-of-school suspensions, the only tie now. We used to be able to suspend students for, they came third infraction for the same thing, you were on the committee, you're out for 45 days, you're coming back term 3. Now that's considered an expulsion, a term expulsion, and it would have to involve an attorney. So that piece changed as far as suspensions. The in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions that are below 10 days or even up to 20 days, those are the same and those are applicable to major infractions. It is no different. The MTSS is really it's for kind of the kids that were, disrupting class, didn't bring my pencil, went to the bathroom for 35 minutes instead of 20 minutes. So that's where you wouldn't necessarily put a student on in-school suspension for that. If it became a problem that they're cutting class, the last thing we want to do is allow them to miss class for the day. I had a student my first year here that was skipping school, and the discipline for that was to suspend them. So I went to see her and said, this is what you have, and it was basically what you said. It was, no, you're going to come to school, but you're going to be here by yourself with no friends. I just couldn't believe it because she said, no, that it says I'm going to get suspended from school because I skipped school. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. So that's kind of what we're trying to do is exactly what you said. Shane, I'm putting you on in-school suspension. You are not going to see any friends. You're not having lunch with your friends. You're not going to recess. You're going to come in, you're going to sit there, and then you're going to go home at the end of the day. Likely, you're not going to do that again, and we still use that strategy.
Go ahead.
So I'm looking at the report that it says, and I think, what's the definition of peer conflict?
You and I are fighting. Like, we might, not fighting, but we're having a disagreement, and I'm telling Heidi that, this about Karen, and then, it's just,
Okay. So
That's
I
up.
think it'd be wise, because it's up, it was 130 last year for, 1920, and it's at 170 already for this year, so I think.
it's
that's
more
something-
reported though. So we weren't necessarily reporting at the same level that we're reporting now.
Right, but I can only look at the data that I'm given,
Yeah,
so.
well, that's why I
but
wanted to, that's why I clarified that at the beginning, that it's not
Well,
apples to apples.
I got the explanation, but I'm still saying 170 reports of peer conflict, whether it's was unreported last time, I think it's still something that needs to be addressed if you're mentioning the bullying and the behavior incident. And then 14 cases of physical assault. I mean, that's something that, I don't care if it was unreported in 1920, there's 14 physical assaults, which means there's 28 parties at least involved. I mean, how are we addressing that as a board, or what are we doing to assist the staff members? Because
Well, that's your principal's job, right? So the board doesn't go in to dictate how you set the policy, you can ask them what their procedures are, but it's the principal's job to facilitate that in the building. That's why you hire a principal, they're the building manager. If you're not happy with how that's happening, then that would go to personnel.
That's not, at that meeting when we had the whole group here, I've been contacted by multiple staff members, which I direct them to the principal.
Yes.
I direct them to you and Kyle, but I still listen to what they have to say. And you got students that are completely out of control, and where you gotta have classrooms evacuated, and they do something called a reflection sheet, and they calm down, and they go back to class. That's not.
I'm not aware of that. No
That's-
one has referred anyone to me for that happening, and I guess I would ask if that has happened, that you let me know and I can talk to the principal
Because
about that.
it's completely uncalled, but it's like, if you gotta evacuate a classroom,
They do a reflection, but I'm not sure that the student is immediately returned back to class after that, so I would need to
so
check
that's
into
where,
that. Yeah,
I think needs to be, the student needs to know that there's gotta be consequences in schools right now, and right now there isn't. Kids are running the schools, and they know they can.
yeah, I don't know that, I haven't seen that happening So I guess I would need you to share if there's a specific incident that I could look
And I
into.
obviously refer it, and if
Yeah.
I can reach
Yeah,
out to
just,
you
you can
next
call me
time.
anytime,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to correct one thing that you said. I don't think that any of our principals are not doing their job. So when you made that comment, I wanted to be clear that was not my direction. My direction is, it was mentioned in the first meeting that we signed those papers to hire. We all should be collaborating together. So if there's 14 physical assaults, we should be working with the principals to give them the support that they need to say, why do we have them? How do we stop them? So I don't want to say that they're doing a bad job. I want to say, as we were mentioned, we're the ones that sign everything. How do we help you get rid or lower these 14 physical assaults? So I want to make sure that's clear, because I would never say that there's a principal or a staff member that does a bad job in this district, because I am quite proud of the highly educated staff that we hire. My job as a school board member, when we're getting this data, is to say, how do we sit here once a month and support that staff? If we're getting phone calls, like Mr. Down says, that staff are saying, we feel as though we're safety. And again, we report them and say, you have to go up the chain of command, but they're also not feeling comfortable. So it's difficult where we are to say, here's your chain of command, but then they're saying to us, well, you know, I'm afraid of retribution, or I'm afraid that I'm going to be retaliated. And again, it's that never-ending circle. So addressing it here and saying, how do we support the staff, is not saying we think staff is doing something wrong. And I just want to make sure that that's put very clear. How do we, as the policy-making board, support the staff so that staff and students and families feel comfortable that there aren't going to be any more physical assaults? Because we all agree that one physical assault is too much.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we all need to come together. So it's not about blaming or anything. It's about saying, how do we as a collective unit, all of us together, figure this out? And if we can all collaborate and work together, maybe this number will go down. So it's not about name blaming and saying somebody's responsible or not doing their job. It's about saying, how do we as a board support you? And
Well, I
how do
think
we
that
provide that?
Well,
in
that's-
supporting the district initiatives and the behavioral group that meets once a month, and if they have specific needs and Kyle comes to you and asks for a budgetary item to support this need, then I would ask you to support that. But we need to let the principals and the administrators run their buildings, ask Kyle and I for support when they need it, and if it's something that we need from the board, we would ask you for your support. Typically, that will come in the form of money or finances for, you know, consultants or programs or placements. So then that's when we would come to the board to seek your support for that.
I want to make sure the staff knows too, that in the principals, I know they got their hands full, and I know they're doing the best they can. right?
Absolutely.
So that's not what I'm getting at. I just
Yep.
know their hands are tied in some areas.
Yep, absolutely.
Again, like Mrs. Sook said, if there's something we can do to help them.
Well, I think just them knowing that you're offering your support to them, and that if they, you know, if they feel uncomfortable going to, I hope that I hope that none of you have heard, and if you had, that you would let me, that there's a member of our school district community that's nervous about asking me for something, because that's not my style. So if someone calls you and they don't want to talk to me, then please let me know so that I can then be proactive and reach out to them. Because that's definitely not my style.
No, but I would say that it's true though. Like, I mean, when we get phone calls, they don't want to call you, and I don't know why.
I don't either, I really don't.
Yeah.
I've not had any
Just a-
negative interaction.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, just a suggestion that I've done with, or mentioned it to a few people who have maybe brought up a nervousness in bringing it up. One, it's their responsibility to bring it to the chain of command. I did mention to them, they also have union representation, and they should reach out to their reps as an option. That way, that overcomes the obstacle of if you fear retaliation, it gives them that anonymous step to at least get someone to talk to. But at the end of the day, we have a chain of command, and I look at all industries, we have to be responsible and understand that there's laws that protect them for retaliation. So I would send that message across the district that please utilize your chain of command. As we ask students to be professional, we're asking you to be the example, show you to your students that this is how I handle this in an adult world. But to a point that I do want to ask back to the issues here with the numbers here. Do we feel that the vacancies that we have is contributing to maybe some increase in cases?
I mean, there's definitely not as many personnel for example, at the high school, when we have a safety team and students are put on, well, I'm trying to think of what we called it, where they get walked everywhere.
Oh, the escort?
Escort, thank you.
Escort.
We did that a lot in discipline committee last year, and that really helped enforce the no contact order, for example,
Yeah.
so that someone isn't violating a no contact order and escalating into a physical fight that's, could have been something that happened at Cumberland Farms on Saturday, and now it's coming to the school on Monday, and there's gonna be a fight about it. We don't have the personnel to do that. We just don't. I think it's a problem across the country. And everyone says, oh, it's a problem across the state. It's across the country as a whole. People are leaving our profession. They're not re-entering it. I'm sure that, you're all connected to school because you're on the school board, so you're all aware of what's going on in education. And it used to be, when I was a teacher, that you applied for a job and there's 300 other people applying for that job. And now, if you look at ed jobs, which is where most of the school positions are posted, there's 27 pages, and it's January. And it's not just teachers that are leaving, there's administrators, superintendents, principals, and there's nobody coming in to take their places. So I do think that has a significant impact on culture and climate in the buildings, for sure, and that filters down to students.
If I could. So we're reporting the numbers on a monthly basis. And just kind of walk me through if a repeat offender, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I get written up on Monday, I get written up on Tuesday, and then Thursday. And forgive me if I'm misstating this, but in a grade school, I probably the same teacher writing me up. In middle school or high school, it may be multiple infractions. How often are we looking, are those write-ups being turned into the principal every day? And are they being looked at? So, okay, I got 5 write-ups. Well, David got written up on Monday, Tuesday, and now it's Thursday. Oh, that's his 3rd write-up for this week. How soon is my write-ups being addressed with me and my parents?
So I had one principal that, because I said, when I look at it, I'm like, okay, I see this in October, what happened here? Which resulted in a conversation with a couple different principals, and there's one who said, I have 4 students that make up my entire October bar. And if anyone asks any questions about my data, please let them know that I am in constant communication with the parents, and that these students are in significant behavior plans, and we're working on it, and that they did have a decrease in November, so.
So
to
the nip it in the
to
bud
answer
type
your
of
question,
attitude is
yeah.
what I'm looking at. And I think,
Yeah.
Shane, I think that's what you're looking for too, is nip it in the
that's
bud.
Yeah.
Exactly,
basically.
right. Exactly what he said, it's just, you get written up, it's,
Yeah.
enough's enough, there's gotta be a line.
Right, and I think that's the frustration that,
Yep, and
us
sometimes it's,
old timers look at, especially of,
yeah,
you got in trouble, I went to school where you got detention for not having your top buttons on
Yeah.
the tie, okay?
yeah, we used to beat you in football, though, I was
Okay,
Brady,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
the new age feel better, and I get it, we're not looking
And it
to
can be
chastise
challenging.
anybody, but
Yeah.
things need to be addressed.
Mhm.
In my opinion, it needs to be addressed at home, because that's where it starts. If your kid can't behave in school, yes, we're obligated to educate your child, but,
in a perfect world, that would work. But even in some worlds, despite numerous calls, you don't get that support. So all you can do is, you can inform your staff that's working with this student that, this is the situation at home and we don't have the support. However, this is what we can do in school to try to help. And I do agree with what you said and what you said, if you're 3 write-ups in 1 week, and that's unusual for you, something's going on. So it's more than just, what are the consequences? It's, I need to find out what's going on. And that's the beauty of logging those behavioral infractions, so that I'm not missing you. because 3 of your teachers didn't write anything, and 1 did, but it was vague, I don't know that you're having a significant issue. It might be just that you're just misbehaving, or it might be that there's something big going on that I need to get you some resources for. So I think that's what this system will lead to, without saying, you have a major infraction and we're not gonna, discipline you. That should never happen. And anytime that anyone puts their hands on someone else, a student, a teacher, that's a major infraction and it needs to be addressed as one. And if that's not happening, then you need to let me know so that I can take care of that.
So, I think we all would agree, are there certain rules that we should maybe, and this would ask back to your team, right? Are there any suggestions or rules that maybe we could be a little more stringent or strict on and support that a policy might have to get in place? I just go back from, obviously, I went to senior high school in Mr. Camerian. We had a very strict dress code policy, right? If the pants were not at the waist, you wouldn't see Sister Catherine, and I would never want to see Sister Catherine, for example, okay? But we have a different demographic that we work with here, and obviously that was a private versus public education. At the same point, are there different processes or techniques that other districts are using while we're combating these behavioral challenges that are happening, some of it at home, and that's influencing how the child behaves or acts out here, that could give a different structure? Because at least in trauma, that all of you have gone through all that training, and from my minor training I've gone through, structure does assist in getting that trauma worked through. So I don't know if there's anything that the district would look for.
Even within our own district, what Brian has been able to do at BCA, and now he's sharing those, he has shared those practices with, what's Mr. Bushway's Raider Pathways? Yeah, and he's having success, so just even within our own district, for people to share practices and that's some of what they're doing on Monday, is we're looking from within, because it's easy for a professional speaker to come in and tell us what to do. Have they done it? Have they done it here? No. So we have heard the theory. We want the practice. And so that's what we really are focusing on, is sharing those best practices. And that's a great question that I can share with our Southeastern superintendent. Because we have school districts that have similar problems, and what are you guys doing that's successful? And how can you share that with us?
Was it quick?
Well, I was gonna say,
If you're replying, I would hate to say no.
the three things that you just talked about, whether it be Bud Carlson, Raider Pathway, and I'll even throw in the CTE, because those give direction to the kids, which turn their behaviors around when you have that goal, especially. And I've seen, especially in the CTE programs, where they're being
And the
held.
ROTC.
In the ROTC.
We have some great programs here.
Those programs, absolutely. And, if it's that, directing the child into that pathway. So, yeah.
And I think that, to your point, not to belabor it, but I think that's a big push this year with the restructuring of the high school with the 9, 10, and 11, 12 teams, and then Ms. Halligan Foley pushing down into the middle school to get kids in a pathway. That's something big. Kathy and Brian and Jason and I have worked a lot on the pathways, and how do we redirect kids so that they want to be here, they want to learn that trade, they want to learn that skill, they want to go into the Air Force, whatever it is. If we can help them find a pathway that works for them,
It keeps them on the straight and narrow.
it keeps them a little bit more focused, for sure.
Sorry.
It's supposed to be quick. So we all know that there was that new law, correct, that restricts certain out-of-school suspension. So, you're gonna have to correct me because I'm gonna be wrong here. So there was certain things that we were doing. So if a student did A, they would potentially get an out-of-school suspension. But we can't really do that now, right? So we've had to say, well, we can't give you an out-of-school suspension, so we've had to change that, right?
It's the thing that's been most impacted, and we still can do it. There was a term that they used, and it was basically if you were just doing the same thing, gross misconduct. So Matt was just pain in the butt all the time. And I'm like, I've had to write him up 4 times this week, and so I'm gross misconducting, and I'm suspending him for 3 days. So there's more to gross misconduct. Now it's, what is the infraction, and what have you, so the state will ask us, what is the infraction, and what have you done to re-educate Matt so he stops doing that? So we have to have that documentation in place. If it's a major infraction, anything that's a major, and I believe that we shared it last month, but I'll have to find it, a list of what the majors are, but, you know, like hitting someone, anything related to drugs, any kind of weapon violation, you know.
Destroying the bathroom?
Destroying vandalism, lighting a fire, you know, igniting a match, it all.
It irritates me that we don't have people to escort kids that are in danger of misbehaving, but we gotta guard the bathrooms.
Right, well, that's a different conversation. But those things are still result in a suspension.
So,
You have that
so
list?
any major,
Do you have that? Do you want me to pull it up? Yeah, if we can.
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, you sure?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just want to make sure I get this right, because when we get phone calls from parents, they're like, oh, it's that new law, and then I'm like, I have no idea. So any major infractions, we haven't changed. So if you have a major infraction, our policies state, and that's the way it is. So I guess for me is, now I'm going to say gross misconduct. I guess, and I don't expect you to have it now because, you know what I mean, but I guess what I'd be looking at is, when we did it before, it was, we did, 3 was, you know what I mean? And again, I get every situation is different. And I guess what I'm looking for now is when it's a gross misconduct, kind of like, what is that general rule that we're kind of following? And do we have that? Is every school doing it differently? Do you know what I mean? Because I'm getting it vaguely that we're kind of having to label it, which I think is great, because when you have the data, you can hopefully resolve some of those issues. So that sounds really good. But waiting or having a parent call that says, well, while you're getting all that data, little Johnny's getting, affected, I think that's something that, I think maybe that's where the disconnect is. So I guess for me, and I don't know about the rest of the board, I guess maybe kind of like a breakdown for the next meeting on what examples of gross misconduct could be and what.
I think we have it, Karen.
Oh, you do?
By
Yeah.
each school has it posted on their, it's required by law for it to be posted on each school's website, what their major infractions and their minor infractions are.
Looks like it's buried into the website.
And then, so if we could get that together
Yeah.
for each school, that'd be.
And it should have been also in their handbook.
Could we get it all together in one, so we don't have to look up,
Yeah.
like, 8 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school? And then I guess for me too, is it also there, like, what the first infraction's gonna be, what's the second infraction? Because I think that's important for us to see, so.
Heidi said it's on there, so she'll get that for.
Yeah, that would,
mail
I
it
think
out.
that would be helpful to us, and any parent that's listening, that's saying, my kid's getting whatever, listen to the next board meeting, because it's gonna be discussed. So I think that's the part that I'm missing. When you have a gross misconduct, okay, it used to be, we kind of just could be like, you're getting an OSS, because we're kind of like, we all need a break from each other, and since I can't leave my job, you're leaving school. But now it's kind of like that multi-tiered kind of like, whether it's you do a reflection, then you get an ISS, then you get an OSS. I think that would be helpful, at least for me. I don't know about the rest of the team. I'm assuming Mr. Downs, since he's the one that brought this up. And seeing what that multi-tiered kind of like thing is. But to know straightforward, and I'm assuming you're going to, any major infraction that happens last year and it happens again this year, it's the same kind of like, we're not having you sign a reflection. You're getting some
Right.
kind of major.
Yeah.
So you start a fire in the bathroom, you're out of school suspension.
And
whatever the
there's
case
a
is.
couple things that are very clear that, they result in an expulsion. And those haven't changed either.
And Ms. Owen, I don't expect you to get it all, you know what I mean? But like saying it's in every school and we have to look at all the schools, it'd be nice to have it.
It
We're not expecting
is,
you to do it today.
elementary schools are all the same, correct? Yeah, so it's just the elementary school, the middle school, and then the high
Can you just
school.
email me the link?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think this brings up a good point, because we did have a little MTSS
know.
presentation
And
with
they
this committee
present-
before that went over the tiers.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna know that, because you and I were in the same committee nights, and it wasn't communicated at the committee report. So I would just say to all chairs, it's a good reminder, when if you're getting a presentation on this, I know it's in our board packet, but maybe highlight that in your summary to the board, so that way it highlights it to other board
Like,
members.
take a
that-
look at the packet.
Yeah,
that
don't forget,
was-
take a look at this, because it goes over those tiers that we had questions on. Because, we weren't those committee nights, so how are we gonna know? Unless we really dive into it and we're not getting that supportive evidence. So it's just a good point on the communication aspect.
I'm gonna ask,
You know?
Doc down.
So,
Don't send it to my wife. That's
Yeah.
that's happened before.
question I may have is,
I think you sent it to me too.
the consistency of the write-ups. For instance, on our staff side, you know, Mr. Jones says, don't do that again. There's no writing. But Mrs. Smith writes everything. And I hear of this in other facets of the inconsistency, you know, this code, and especially, you know, I'm not gonna get too far into it, but masks. You know, the enforcement of wearing a mask properly. You know, we have some that enforce it, and some that just kind of turn their face, or turn their head the other way. The consistency across the staff so that these are accurate and the kids are actually more receptive. You know, they know that.
Remember cell phones? When it was like, you know, this teacher would let you have it, this teacher wouldn't, this teacher made you put it in a locker, and so eventually it becomes a problem. And I think that the lesson that's learned is that consistency is key. And that's actually one of the things that we're going over on Monday is those tier 1 interventions and how important it is for everyone to be consistent, because you're absolutely right. It's okay, Kathy says it's okay for you not to, but then you come into my room and I'm like, no, I'm suspending you. 'Cause you're
Right.
And you're like, but it was okay here.
Right, we're
So-
sending mixed messages out there, right?
Absolutely, and I
So-
think that's a challenge that we've always had in education, and we have to continue to beat that drum. for
So in the
consistency.
accountability, and not to put our staff on notice, but the accountability of the staff
To enforce the rules.
enforce that,
Yep.
you know, and again, in other avenues, basically, because there are no consequences if there's no.
It becomes part of that professional responsibility in the evaluation system. Yep, absolutely.
All right,
I 100% agree with you, and I think that at this level, that we know that that's an issue and continue
Well,
to try to.
and that's the thing,
Yeah.
it's bringing it all the way down to the parent, whoever,
Yeah.
right? It's everybody's
It's
responsibility.
everybody has to be on the same page,
to
or else
do
we're
this.
not gonna get
So,
anywhere.
you know, from, you know, the central office down to.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you.
So, a really good resource on the MTSSB website, under the interventions tab, just scroll down a little bit and click on Rochester Middle School. It really breaks it down, minor behaviors, what the step is, major behaviors, what that step is, and then what happens for repeated or escalated minor behaviors. They have it all laid out, and that was presented to us by Mr. Houghton.
When was that?
It's on their MTSSB website under
Oh, there's your
interventions.
tiers right
I
there.
think they were here in
Last meeting?
October?
November or
November.
November.
Yeah.
So right here
Yeah.
is the interventions
So if
tab.
I go under the November packet.
You can actually go right on, it should be right on the
Scroll down
webpage.
the
Should be your
website,
December packet.
interventions, and then scroll down, click on Rochester Middle School.
Yeah, I have no idea what website you're at.
It's,
You're saying it's in my December packet, I'll go and look
it
there.
should be in December packet of the committee report for November.
Here, do you want me to send you this link?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Let's be honest.
Website.
If I'm out of
Maybe that
way,
can be provided to the
like, I mean,
committee.
and that's the thing, it's like, when we talk about, like, it's at a school level, like, as a school board member, like, do you have to look up 8 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school? Because if that's the case, you know, for the dummies of the school board that aren't, like, I don't want to be searching all of those. Like, it's hard enough to search, like, if there's a snow day. So putting it all together, if you guys know where to get that information, is great for me. Because, I mean, I'm looking at this. Sorry, Shane, I didn't raise my hand. Like, I'm looking at this, like, inappropriate language. Let's be honest. Unintentionally profanity used as an exclamation and not directed towards an individual, we'd be writing high school kids up, like, left and right. So there's got to be some kind of better definition. Because even I, never at a board meeting, have sworn, you know what I mean, like you drop something
I
or
do
you're
not
mad.
believe that.
So I mean, we're not writing that up. So I'm looking at that going, is it if it's directed at Mr., you know, if I swear at Mr. Bolo instead of just dropping something and saying, oh, S word. You know what I mean? Like, I guess for me, I'm looking at that. Because if that's the case, and Mr. Kamiri is saying we're not all writing it up, the data will show that we're not writing all that up. But I'm not saying we should. I'm saying if you're using inappropriate language at the elementary level, that's a lot bigger than using that inappropriate language at the high school. So are we differentiating the grade levels? And if so, what I was sent, which is great, we're not doing. And I'm not saying we should, but I think that's the issue that I have is, where are we holding accountable? What extent, is there different levels for different grade levels?
We are.
But if you look at that, I'm reading it it says inappropriate language behavior, inappropriate language for minor. Unintentionally
inappropriate
profanity used as an exclamation and not directed towards an individual. If we wrote that up at the high school, there would be a lot of write-ups. And if I look at what was sent to us, because I was comparing, and I'm looking at there'd be a huge amount of numbers, and we're not. And I'm not saying we should, but I'm saying that's where I think for me, if Mr. Kamiri is saying, are we being consistent? I mean.
But a minor infraction like that could be a conversation. It could be a phone call home. It could just be you're staying in at recess for one day.
Correct, but if you go all the way to the bottom, Ms. Harrington, and you see it says 3 minors in the same category equal a major offense. So then a major offense, what is that? Do you know what I mean? I guess that's my question, and maybe it just needs to be defined better. I'm saying I don't know.
But I also think it differs elementary level versus the high school level too. And that's why they have separate lists of
When
interventions.
someone gets written up, does a phone call go home? Or does it just get filed? And the phone call goes home when
I don't know what the common practice is.
Typically a phone call will go home.
Okay.
That will go out, or an email.
Is this like elementary? Is this a specific one?
This
or
is the general one right
Okay.
here. I don't think they've,
So that MTSSB intervention website, is that a district internal?
yes.
All right, so that's not a public
Right.
site.
It's
Wanna keep
specific
that.
in each, like Karen said, if you had a student at Chamberlain Street or if you had a student at East Rochester, then you would look on their site for,
And those charts are public on each
They're-
school
yes.
site, so we could.
they're required to be public, so,
Okay.
yeah,
Just
they're
wanna make
they're
sure.
on.
And the tiers are outlined.
If they're not on, someone needs to let me
Yeah,
know
yeah.
because that is required.
I've been looking and I can only find it on Chamberlain's site
Did you
so
check
far.
in the handbook?
I can,
Well, I guess that goes by our consistency, right?
It's supposed to be
Website-
in
the
the
website
handbook.
Yeah,
is
I've
not
seen it, but-
consistent in navigation.
They're supposed to be in the handbook,
Yeah.
so if they're not in the handbooks, then we need to address that.
like middle school, I'm not even finding the handbook right now. Yeah, I'll keep looking,
Yeah,
but it's not
I
consistent,
think
it's
Adam
not
told me
easy
where
to
his
find this
handbook was
stuff.
today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that we have the ability for each school to personalize, but I think if there's some standardization, they'll have to bring up the board meeting. If that,
see if I can find where Adam's book is.
And just to know, that is what the MTSS committee is doing now, and they had a meeting today, and they were looking at the website, and they had a number of to-dos to clean it up and consistency stuff.
So Ms. Harrington, just to let you know, I was looking at what Ms. Zolman sent, and I just opened the link that you sent.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think when we as a board are getting confused by all that, that's, again, I may need you to just kind of put it in parent-friendly terms and kind of dumb it down for me, which is okay. But when we're looking at these tier options, I get that, but then that other list, when you're looking at
that
it,
was
it's kind of
more
a general list.
The one I sent you, it's really laid out by school, and the elementary is consistent, but the middle school and the high school look different. So but it lays it out. I found the middle school handbook on the website under more resources. If you go to the middle school website under more resources, you can see the handbook.
So I guess the question is, when we talk about profanity, right? First grader says, drops a bomb, holy Moses, right? But then we're all sitting there saying, but a 12th grader does it, it's okay. Why can't we have a standard rule that says if you drop the bomb to somebody across, well, now we have 5th grade, 15, 14, whatever, but I mean pre-K to 12, I'm sorry, welcome to Rochester, we're gonna set you up for a better life, because I'm tired of them coming to the workforce and that's their language. Because guess what, in the workforce, we fire them. And then there's no call home,
Right.
here's your unemployment paperwork, have
Yeah.
a nice day.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately, we talk about the challenges of their home life, we talk about this. Buck stops, I guess, with us, right?
I think that would be a question, I think Jenna is
I don't know if
on the
legally we can do that.
MTSSB team, and so when they come back, I would ask how the high school handles that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I just respond? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying we know that high schools are more prone to
Correct,
swear.
but do we think,
So-
that we wanna let that happen?
Well,
That's the
no,
question,
and
right?
I was using that because I think we all know that high schoolers swear more than a first grader, hopefully, if that's it. But what I'm saying is, if we were writing them up, I mean, that would take a lot of time for the staff to be writing up every time a high schooler swore. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, but it's just the point, if we as a district believe that this is needed, is it gonna, do we feel that, that's one example, right, of behaviors?
Right.
Well, hopefully over time.
That's what
that
I'm saying, over
you'll see
time,
an
it will no
improvement.
longer be an issue.
Right, and I believe
Or
that,
less.
you know, when you start those processes, when, you know, implement it for all, but if we start teaching that when they first come in, and that remains a consistent expectation, then hopefully by the time they get up, that they're gonna
You're not
follow
having
that
that conversation.
expectation.
Well, and you could use the reverse, and the next one is physical contact. If a little first grader kicks another little first grader, it's a teachable moment. If a high schooler kicks another high schooler,
It's a
it's
problem.
no longer a teachable. So I mean, I'm just saying, when you're looking at these, Heidi, if you could pull up the behavior
Use your rest
definitions.
Yeah.
When you're looking at those, I'm just saying there's a difference with all of them between like your behavior at the high school level and your behavior at the elementary level. And that's, you know, I use the language as one, but I mean the kicking too. Like first graders are gonna kick, throw dirt. I mean, that, again, those are teachable moments, those are reflection sheets. But when you're at the high school and you're kicking somebody or using physical aggression, it's worse.
But if they kick somebody, instead of it being teachable, maybe there's a additional level we have to do to hit that home.
Well, and I would assume there
I
is,
hate
I'm just
being
saying.
like, we need to be a militant type of organization, but that's the point I made. Is there more of a strict, we have to be a little more enforceable in certain aspects in our consistency, that's all.
I agree, because parents will probably, there'll be consequences at home if their kid's getting in trouble, being sent home, there's gonna be more consequences at home.
Hopefully.
But if the teachers and the staff are just constantly dealing with it, the parents don't have to.
Yeah.
Used to be more consequences at home, now it's, yeah, kids in my kids' homes.
Yeah, it's more challenging today, for sure.
I'm really overwhelmed by these statistics right here. Tell me what they, if a third grader throws a watered up piece of paper at the kid next door, is that gonna end up
I
on
don't
here?
think that would be on there. No, these would be, if it warrants a write-up or an interest, you know, missing recess, or if you throw something, no, if you're throwing something all day long at other people and it's disrupting the education, then I'm gonna remove you and I'm gonna call your parents, and that is gonna be in
So
there.
who keeps these statistics and where?
These are at each school.
Well, I mean, as a third grade teacher, do I go down to the principal and say,
No,
hey,
you
by the
ac-
way,
You actually input that
Johnny
right
was in the bathroom too long, or?
You put that in. We actually have a system in our student information system that we have where all the data is housed. I've actually put that right in there. There's a behavior tab, and I put in there, you know, Sandy, da da
And
da
that gets
da,
on this chart?
and then it gets inputted into this chart, yeah.
Oh, my God, that's overwhelming.
A lot of work, right?
It's a lot of work, and I'm not sure it's valuable, but I understand it for real infractions. I just don't understand it for what I consider not to be real infractions.
Well, if I'm just redirecting you in class, I'm not gonna log that. This is
Yeah.
for, you know, when, if you have
And
significant
you're trying to
behavior
tell
though.
me, how many kids at the Maple Street School? 100 and some odd kids?
A little over 100.
And so they're on the first day of school or something?
Well, they start school in
had
August.
231 infractions in
They-
that month, that first month of school?
Are you looking at September?
I'm looking at September.
So they've already been in school for a whole month. by
Okay,
September.
so they
Yeah.
had, so 100 kids had 150 infractions in the first month of school?
It seems aggressive.
Are we
Yeah.
really recording the right
No,
thing?
3 kids had 82.
Right, so that would be a great question for that principal, for them to answer, because I can't answer that question, but
Yeah.
I believe
I mean,
that that's a great question to ask. That was the question that I asked for this other principal, why so many, what was the
Yeah,
problem in
right, yeah.
October? And then she said, you know, there's 4 students that made up all of that, and this is what we're doing.
Right.
So, the Maple Street principal was not available to answer any questions
Okay.
on that data, but that's a great question to ask, and I think it would be really
Yeah, I
helpful
mean,
to have
you know.
principals be present
got-
to answer questions about their data, absolutely.
It just, I'm not sure. I-
You can move forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're adjourned.
That was it, right?
She could ask her if there's anything else.
Anything else on the other?
Nothing else on the other for me.
Anybody else have anything else? Okay,
I'd like to move to adjourn.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.